Well, thank you very much for welcoming us here, Catherine. As one of my team remarked this morning, we're in the wrong business. We should have been fishmongers. I'd like to express my thanks to the City of London Corporation, actually, for all of your support, not just for this conference, but also for the Commission as a whole, and to thank Aviva, who are also supporting today's conference, and the Commission. We're hugely grateful to those organisations and to many others for their support. So the Commission on Economic Justice is our landmark initiative to rethink economic policy for post-Brexit Britain. Launched a year ago today, the Commission brings together leading figures from across society, from business, from trade unions, and from civil society and academia to examine the challenges facing the UK economy and to make practical recommendations for its reform. The big economic issue facing the country right now, of course, is Brexit. And we will be talking about Brexit today. But there are also a deeper set of problems in the British economy that predate the vote to leave and which we will need to confront. We make this argument in the interim report of the Commission. Our main message is this: the British economic model needs fundamental reform. Beneath the headline figures of reasonable growth and low unemployment, the economy is suffering from deep and long-standing weaknesses. From the perspective of ordinary households, it is broken. It is no longer generating rising earnings for a majority of the population. The period from 2008 to 2021 will be the longest period of earnings stagnation for 150 years. The UK is the most geographically unbalanced economy in all of Europe. Only in London and the southeast has output recovered to its pre-crisis peak. Work is no longer a route out of poverty. Catherine mentioned the figures for London, but they're true for the UK as a whole. The majority of households living in poverty today are also households who are in work. Over the past 40 years, 10% of income growth has gone to the bottom 10%, and 40% of income growth has gone to the top 10%. And finally, young people are set to be poorer than their parents. So the economy that we have is creating neither prosperity nor justice. The question is, why? In the interim report of the Commission, we make the argument that the reason that our economy is doing so poorly is because it suffers from deep structural problems. We don't have a British economic model, we have an economic muddle. Powerful strengths sit alongside profound weaknesses. We have world-leading businesses and world-lagging productivity. We have one of the world's top financial sectors, and yet a lower rate of investment than most of our major competitors. We are succeeding in international trade in services, but falling behind in trade in goods, resulting in a huge overall trade deficit. We have experimented with bold monetary policy, but we are constrained by pre-Keynesian fiscal orthodoxy. And finally, we know that the economy depends on public spending, but we haven't been sufficiently willing to pay for it. What is striking is that these problems go back a quarter of a century or more. They aren't new. They aren't the fault of any single political party alone. They are problems that we must all confront. As we look ahead, we face enormous challenges and opportunities as we enter the 2020s. There is what we call a decade of disruption on the horizon. These challenges include Brexit, of course, but also deeper globalization and a continuing shift of economic power eastwards. They include demographic change, with the over 65s set to increase by a third, from around 11 million to nearly 16 million. There is also, of course, an extraordinary pace of technological change. New phenomena such as automation and artificial intelligence brought together that have the potential to really reshape the world of work. Now, the UK, in this particular context, has the opportunity to be world-leading, but these technological forces also have the potential to create huge disruption, particularly in the world of work. The last big challenge for the future, as we see it, is just accelerating environmental degradation. It's occurring on an unprecedented scale. Now, there are real opportunities from green growth, but we must be prepared to seize them. So we need a response both to the structural problems inherited from the past and the challenges and opportunities presented by the future. We now need fundamental reform. Tinkering at the edges or attempting, in a very British way, to just muddle through simply isn't good enough. Where we find ourselves today is the result of the accumulation of deliberate policy choices over the past 40 years. We can make different choices now. We can rewrite the rules of our economy. And the reason that we know that that is possible is that it's happened before. A period of crisis followed by fundamental reform. The economic order broke down in the 1930s after the Great Depression, and a new settlement was formed in the 1940s. The post-war settlement broke down in the 1970s with the oil shock and stagflation, and a new settlement was forged in the 1980s. The 2008 financial crisis marked the breakdown of the settlement of the past 3 decades, and that is why a new settlement must now be forged. New policy options, new institutions, and new ways of understanding the economy must be debated, and that is what today is all about. We will talk about the immediate challenge of Brexit, and we will discuss reshaping, rethinking, and reimagining the British economy for post-Brexit. I'm delighted that you've chosen to join us today, and I look forward to what should be a fantastic set of discussions. I'm delighted that our first speaker this morning is George Freeman MP. George is the Member of Parliament for Mid-Norfolk. He's also chair of the Conservative Policy Forum. He's also co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Inclusive Growth. George has been calling for an intellectual renewal for the Conservative Party, and he's at the forefront of those questioning received wisdom and arguing for fundamental economic change. We will first hear from George, and then we'll open up to questions from the audience. George, please come to the stage.